following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Every day, citizens around the country are faced with new dilemmas. Dilemmas that affect them profoundly. Whether it's injustice, discrimination, falling through the cracks, scandals and cronyism, balances of power, ethics, religious freedoms, state versus citizens, and unfunded mandates, and the list goes on and on and on. Welcome to Speak Up. It's directed at those who have fallen through the cracks, and it gives them a voice. It's your turn to speak up, to stand up and fight back.
Welcome to Speak Up. I'm Kevin Avard, your host, and today I'm joined by Jim Lawrence, who's actually running in the 2nd Congressional District, and you're one of 3 candidates that is running for the same seat. I want to welcome you to the show.
Thanks for having me, Kevin.
Right. Now, actually, I should have said Honorable Jim Lawrence, because you served in the New Hampshire House.
I did serve in the New Hampshire House. I had the opportunity to serve for 3 terms in the New Hampshire House, representing the towns of Hudson, Litchfield, and Pelham. From 2002 through 2008. I was also an Air Force veteran, graduate of the United States Air Force Academy.
Thank you for your service.
It was my pleasure. I got a great education out of it. One of the best decisions I ever made in my life. Small business owner, proud parent of 8 children.
What do you do for a business?
I own a consulting firm. We do, of all things, we specialize in making recommendations for federal government streamlining. My company has saved millions of taxpayer dollars. I should say we identified billions, but it's hard to get the government to take all those good, good ideas to heart. Right.
And so how long have you been in business?
Over 15 years.
Okay. So you know what it's like, employees and everything like that?
We're a small firm, small business. Our max strength, 16 employees.
So you know the heart of New Hampshire. You know the heart of the small businessman. What are some of the biggest struggles that you've since you're a business owner, that you've had to go through over the last few years?
Well, the biggest problem that I see for small businesses right now is the government's not helping. The government's getting in the way. There's a lot of government overregulation, overtaxation of small businesses. I know firsthand from that experience how the government can prevent small businesses from creating jobs and helping the economy grow. And if I get elected to Washington, I'm going to be on the front line fighting for the small businesses on Main Street.
Excellent. I heard that New Hampshire has the 3rd highest business profit tax in the country. New York and Massachusetts beat us. That's why people aren't coming here.
You know, you're absolutely right. My firm did some work across the border, and I'm sad to say that the taxes we paid on that work was less in Massachusetts than in New Hampshire. It is a real problem, and you didn't even bring in the fact that we have a business enterprise tax in this state as well, which ignores revenue.
I meant the combination, yeah. And of course, then there's the problems with workers' comp and a whole range of issues which makes New Hampshire like off limits. So you're running for Congress. My gosh, the world is on fire. And we're talking about border security. There is ISIS that's out there. We have a lot of overseas issues. And of course, domestically, you look at the clock. Have you seen the gold commercial? Right?
Oh, absolutely.
Hi, I'm William Devane, right? And you look at that clock. It started at 16 trillion. Now it's almost $18 trillion. How do we get that to stop?
Well, the only way you can get it to stop is by getting the federal government from stop growing and stop overspending and overtaxing the citizens. Let's face facts. We have a situation now where the debt is growing at such a high rate. My 8 children won't be able to afford to pay for it. They're going to get taxed out of existence. We have to start cutting spending now. You know, in the state of New Hampshire, and you know from your experience, we actually balance the budget. It's time for Washington, D.C. to take those types of steps.
One of the biggest challenges, though, that I think that you're going to have, and if you get there, is this. When we're legislature, at the legislature. We don't group all our packages into one big omnibus bill. We look at the legislation one bill at a time. We have it in one committee at a time, and we vote on it one bill at a time. Then it goes to the Senate. Then they do their thing, and then of course we have the conference or whatever. It gets passed in singularity. But when you get to Congress, you're going to have this pork, this pork, this pork, and oh, by the way, money for the VA. How do you fight that? And how can you be effective when we have this kind of a system?
Well, I'm glad that you brought up the example of our state house. One of the problems that I see is that Congress is very large. A lot of members. You're not going to get anything done being a lone voice down there. Right. You're going to have to be a coalition builder. I think coming from a larger state house like New Hampshire gives you a little bit of an edge to be able to understand what it really takes to bring enough people into your coalition to actually get something done. And you brought up the fact that they lump a lot of legislation together. That is going to be an issue. It's going to be tough. If I'm elected to Congress, I'm just going to have to be extremely diligent, stick to my guns, and try and force the agenda to bringing down the growth of the federal government and cut spending.
A lot of businesses and property owners, they're worried about the EPA and their overregulation. What can you do? How can we stop the power mongering of the executive branch, if you will, to just, how do you stifle that? Because right now, if you have a puddle in your backyard, right, you can't even walk across that puddle without the EPA permission, in theory. And it is getting sick, and it is a way to skirt the Constitution and property rights and state rights through these executive orders and these branches of government which have no accountability except to one person.
I'm glad you brought up the word accountability. One of the biggest issues in my candidacy that I'm bringing up time and time again is that we have a lack of government accountability in Washington. As a matter of fact, our representative, Representative Ann Custer, is silent on all these issues that are coming up where there's a lack of government accountability, whether it's the IRS, the Veterans Administrations, the NSA, the CIA. These are all prime examples of where the federal government has overstepped its bounds, and they're not being held accountable.
Would you vote to get rid of Obamacare?
Absolutely. I would be the first person to vote to repeal Obamacare, and I'll tell you why. Everywhere I go across the state, it's amazing to me. When I talk to people from Colebrook to North Haverhill to Claremont to Keene, whether they were for Obamacare before it came out or against it, most of them are against it now, and they're against it because it really damaged the people of the state.
Can I ask another question? Who has the power to tax?
The only people that have the power to tax are the U.S. Congress.
So, I'm going to throw this out at you. If Congress has that ability to tax, when premium rates go up on Obamacare, and we know Obamacare is a tax according to the
Supreme Court
yeah, decision, which is pretty weird. However, it's a tax. So every time those taxes or those premiums go up, taxes go up. And yet it skirts the people's voice.
Yeah, they've circumvented the legislative process in that case. I mean, we can go on and on and on about the damage that Obamacare has done. It's robbed people of their choices. It was promised that it was going to be cheaper. It's not. It's more expensive for more people. It's eliminated people's options in this state to get health care. I was just up in Bethlehem the other day. I was talking to a gentleman named Peter. His daughter, who after switching to Obamacare could no longer see her doctor. She's actually left the country to get health care. That's not America.
It used to be the opposite way around.
Absolutely. I mean, we're damaging our health care system to no end. Certainly what we had before, even though it was far from perfect, it was much better than what we have now.
Starting from the beginning of this administration, this Obama administration, I remember, and I remembered very well how that he began to eliminate or turn his back on our allies. And the first one that I remember was Poland. Mm-hmm. And now look at the consequence. We have the Crimea and all that's happening out there. They turned their back on him. They wanted the missile defense. And Poland may be next. But then we saw Israel and how that he's turned his back on Israel. And then we're spying on Germany to such a rate. this administration is spying on the Supreme Court justices, and it's spying on the Senate.
Senate, yeah, absolutely. Intelligence Committee.
And that right there, it's basically a way to bribe people and extort.
It's all government accountability. Look, Representative Ann Custer is not holding the government accountable right now. She's silent. If I am in Congress, I'm going to hold President Barack Obama and everybody else in Washington, D.C. accountable, because this is what it's all about. Our only voice in Washington, D.C. are our representatives. If our congressman is not talking about these issues, who's going to represent the voice of the people of New Hampshire? That's one of the main reasons why I had to get into this race.
Right. You need somebody who's going to be a Donnybrook, willing to take on a fight.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you plan on sponsoring any bills right off once you get in, or is that something you're waiting for? Or?
Well, you know, if you look at my platform, you can kind of see where I'm interested in. You talked about foreign policy. We have the worst foreign policy since Jimmy Carter. President Barack Obama, being supported by Representative Ann Custer, she voted with him 95% of the time, has led us down a path where our allies can't depend on us. You brought up Poland, you brought up Israel, and our enemies are emboldened. We have ISIS growing as the largest threat to national security since Al-Qaeda, and they're much worse than Al-Qaeda in Syria and Iraq, and it's a direct result of the failed foreign policy of President Barack Obama.
Everybody's worried that prior to the election that Obama's going to give a pardon or a, what do you call that, for the 5 million illegal immigrants that are coming to the...
administrative amnesty.
Amnesty, yeah.
You know, it's funny you should mention that. One of the things that really makes it, as someone who's concerned about this crisis right now in the country with illegal immigration, it outrages me that our Representative Ann Custer actually voted against House Amendment 136, which would have ended administrative amnesty. That's another circumvention of the law. We can't keep continuing these breaches of government accountability to go unchecked.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of racial tension in our country right now. And it seems to me that the days of Martin Luther King are gone, and there are professional agitators out there. And what was a bad scenario has just become worse. How do we fix this? How do we fix this?
Well, the first thing that we need to do is we need to get some common sense leadership in Washington that's not going to feed the flames of hatred. Mm-hmm. Right now, you've got President Barack Obama sending Eric Holder to an already inflamed area, making a situation worse. Look, I'm the son of a 34-year-plus law enforcement veteran. My father was a police officer who rose through the ranks of chief. I understand the challenges that police officers across this nation face every day. We owe it to that community to allow the wheels of justice, the freest, most open, and best operating judicial system in the world. We need to let the wheels of justice turn, and then once there have been some solid determinations made, then we can work together to try and heal the community. Right. You know, I recently saw a relative of Martin Luther King on the news, and I thought what she said was very appropriate for this circumstance. And she was talking about what Dr. Martin Luther King would have done in this case. And he would have been an advocate of peace. He would have been an advocate of calm. He would have been an advocate to try and alleviate some of the pain and make some of these situations better, not worse. He would not advocate the rioting and lawlessness that we see. Right. And we see the agitators, as you call them, promoting this type of bad behavior. It's unacceptable.
I don't know what they have to gain from that other than more bitterness and more hatred. And the grand jury hasn't even finished any of its work, and yet the governor comes out and says, you know, well, they better have a conviction or something to that effect.
And I can't think of anything more un-American or unconstitutional to say.
Well, that brings up my whole question about, can we trust our justice system?
Well, we keep talking about this. It's all in accountability. Mm-hmm. If we have a government by the people, it's going to be accountable to the people. We need to make sure that we increase the accountability of all factions of government, because that's what all these issues are being created by, a lack of government accountability. Doesn't matter whether you're talking about the IRS, the Veterans Administration, the NSA, the CIA. You can even talk about the judicial system. Right. It all comes down to government accountability.
And when there is no accountability, we have corruption. I'm just thinking about the IRS situation where today they've just discovered, oh, you know what? Lois Lerner's emails, wow, they're in the archives. It's just too much work to get at them. So what I've seen on a local basis, just serving in the redress committee, that the bureaucracies have one thing going for them. It's called time. If they can wait you
And
out,
our tax dollars.
time in your tax dollars, and if they can wait you out, yeah, you're only going to be in for a couple of years if you're a state legislature. If you're in the House, you're serving up in D.C., it's 4 years, whatever. So they can wait you out. If they can wait you out a couple of years, and people get tired of the story, there's no accountability. Now we got a guy like Trey Gowdy. He's doing the investigations. I love that spirit. I want them accountable. I want everybody accountable. I want you accountable. I want the IRS accountable. I want the executive branch accountable. I hope that you're going to bring something like that.
Well, it's my goal. I mean, it's the campaign platform I'm running on.
Yep.
When I was first elected to the New Hampshire State House in 2002, I conducted myself that way. I'm going to continue to conduct myself in the future that way. If I'm elected to Congress, I'm going to hold and fight to hold the federal government accountable. I want a smaller and more accountable federal government because I want to win back New Hampshire from the federal government.
How about making the laws that you guys make up there the same laws that you serve? You know what I'm saying?
Well, it's funny you should mention that because, everywhere I go across the state, I'm talking to people in the coffee shops across the state, and I'm really trying to run a conservative grassroots campaign to be the grassroots conservative choice of the people. Mm-hmm. But what I'm hearing everywhere is that, they appreciate the type of candidate that I am, the life experience that I bring, because, I've started a small business, I'm a veteran, I was in the Air Force, I'm a parent of 8, I've had the opportunity to make educational choices for my children, I'm a homeowner, I pay property taxes. The people feel comfortable that when I go down to Washington, I'm going to vote for things that are going to impact me just like everyone else.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons why I feel like I am the only natural choice that can defeat Representative Ann Custer, because I have the life experience, the conservative voting record, and the message that can defeat Representative Ann Custer. So I agree with you. Congress needs to live under the same rules that everyone else does. That's right. Part of the problem.
Well, we need that kind of spirit up there. There's no doubt about it. And we need somebody that, obviously, you have to build coalitions, but there's times where I've been following this for a long time, since I was a kid. And I just get that same familiar gut feeling when you pull your punches. I want somebody there that actually is going to, and I know people that I talk to, they want somebody that's willing to take on a fight and finish it. Yeah, I know you got to make compromises. I know that they do the pork. I know that they bundle their things. But people are tired of watching that clock and watching the government get away with things. And it feels as though we're losing control. We want somebody to say, hey, enough, and then stand by it. The gravitas syndrome, whatever you want to call that, right?
Well, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, we keep talking about this government accountability issue. I mean, that's one of the main reasons why I got in this race, because I saw all these issues coming up at the government. I saw Representative Ann Custer. I saw a video of her getting asked questions by citizens of this state on government accountability. And she turned her back on those citizens and walked off the stage. That's not holding the government accountable. That's excusing a government that has gotten out of control. It's time for us to rein government back in, and it's time for a congressman to go down to Washington and win back New Hampshire for the people of New Hampshire.
All right, let me just rattle off a couple. Second Amendment.
I support the Second Amendment wholeheartedly. Lifetime member of the NRA. I'm a sportsman. I've held a hunting license in this state every year, almost every year since I've been here. I believe that the Constitution is the highest law in the land, and the Second Amendment does afford the citizens of this country and this state the right to bear arms, and I'm going to support the Second Amendment 100%.
There's one little phrase in there, shall not infringe.
Absolutely.
On any level, as far as I'm concerned. The 14th Amendment is a pretty important one, which is the equal protection under the law clause. A lot of people are concerned about when life begins. Any comments?
I'm a pro-life candidate. I've always been a pro-life candidate. When I was elected in 2002 to the New Hampshire State House, I was actually one of 3 state representatives that was selected to lead the floor fight for parental notification. So I've always been a pro-life candidate, and I'm going to continue to be a pro-life candidate in Washington.
I never thought that I would think of the First Amendment being under attack, but recently, I believe there were 42 Congress people voting to amend it. I guess you're for the First Amendment, I hope.
I'm for the Constitution.
That's right.
Okay? It's
Yeah.
the highest law in the land. It's the only thing that protects our rights. It's the only thing that gives us the freedom that we enjoy,
Right.
and we need to support that.
How can people get in touch with you and help you out with your campaign?
Well, the easiest way to find me is on my website. It's lawrenceforcongress.com. You can also contact Jen at jimlawrenceforcongress.com as an email. And there's a volunteer form there, as well as an ability to donate to the campaign. Just remember, all support is the first step at winning back New Hampshire from the federal government.
All right. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thanks
I
for
really
having me,
appreciate it.
Kevin.
All righty. Well, that's it for now, and thank you for watching Speak Up. We hope that this informs you. Some people might not know that there were 3 candidates, and we wanted to make sure that you are very aware of that. It's never too late. If you want to get involved, please do what you can. Thank you for watching Speak Up, and we want to thank our sponsor, Aardvark, the Dean of Clean, the carpet cleaner in the Nashua area. If you want to contact them, call 603-521-7657. Thanks for watching.
Every day, citizens around the country are faced with new dilemmas. Dilemmas that affect them profoundly. Whether it's injustice, discrimination, falling through the cracks, scandals and cronyism, balances of power, ethics, religious freedoms, state versus citizens, and unfunded mandates, and the list goes on and on and on. Welcome to Speak Up. It's directed at those who have fallen through the cracks, and it gives them a voice. It's your turn to speak up, to stand up and fight back.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.